But day 7 of an unexpected election campaign now is almost over. Labour's big NHS announcement was overshadowed by confusion and controversy over the party's hokey-cokey handling of Diane Abbott's suspension. Tonight, no one knows if she'll be allowed to stand or not. She's Schrodinger's candidate. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats have been in Wales and the West Country talking about farming. Ed Davey has swapped paddleboarding for bicycling today. And the Tories have another eye-catching policy. Well, an end to Mickey Mouse degrees. That's what they're calling it, saving the taxpayer and all that cash going to fund 100,000 new apprenticeships each year. Well, this is, of course, just the latest policy after a slew of policy announcements from the Conservatives. First, we had mandatory national service for people turning 18. Then, of course, we had further announcements on the triple lock, turning it into a pensions quadruple lock, or triple lock squared, whatever you want to call it. But it's been a third day in a row and a third new policy. What on earth is going on in the Conservatives? I'm joined now by the former chairman, Jake Berry. Jake, why on earth are you coming up with so many new policies all of a sudden? Haven't you been in office for quite a while? Aren't you proud of the record on which you could stand before all of these new announcements?
Absolutely, Tom. Really proud of it, and that's why I'm delighted to be out talking to people here in Lancashire and Rosendale and Darwen about everything we've done. But this is a general election, Tom, and people expect the government to demonstrate what plan it has for the future of Britain, because every election is a referendum on your future, and people want to know what a Conservative government will do for them. Compare that to the Labour Party, where Keir Starmer isn't announcing anything. He just wants to win by default. He wants to sneak into Downing Street and have carte blanche to do whatever he wants. We're setting out very clearly what we have achieved and what we will continue to achieve for you and your family. And my big message to all of my voters here locally is don't risk it on Labour, because frankly, no one has a clue what they're going to do to us when they get in.
The Labour Party today has been talking about tens of thousands new places, trying to get down those NHS waiting lists. Of course, it's not a new policy, I'll grant you that. It's something they've said before, but you can't say they don't have any policy in that area.
Well, they're very few, don't they? Let's look at that NHS policy. I listened to it very carefully this morning. I think Wes Streeting is probably one of the best performers in the Labour Party. He's a brilliant communicator, so I listened to him with interest this morning. And what he said is the Conservatives have introduced as a pilot this brilliant new scheme in St Thomas's, a hospital in London. And guess what? It works, and it's reducing waiting times massively. Now, what I'd say is, well, given that we're the ones who've done it, it's working, we're going to continue to roll it out. Don't take false promises from the Labour Party, some sort of la-la land that they're projecting where, just because you change the government, everything will get good. You've got to trust what you see with your own eyes. If something is delivering and it's the Conservatives who've implemented it, I would suggest you carry on with that, because we know the plan is working.
Well, let's turn now to Mickey Mouse degrees, your big policy announcement today. The Prime Minister has been talking about it, saying that more people should do apprenticeships and potentially fewer people should go to university. What does that say to the many voters who might be thinking of voting Conservative, whose degrees are suddenly being derided by your party leader?
Well, I'm not quite sure what Mickey Mouse degrees may be, but I don't know if that's the terminology they use. But the Office for Students came out with some extraordinary figures saying that up to 25% of the degrees, you're actually worse off having done them, having spent those tens of thousands of pounds as a young person to do them. You're actually worse off than if you'd never gone to university
under a
before.
Conservative government.
I'll say one thing to you, Tom, about the apprenticeship, which I think is hugely important. I live here in East Lancashire. I'm in Rosendale and Darwen. We have a fantastic manufacturing base. Our economy, whether it's furniture making, chemicals, the aerospace industry, is driven by apprenticeships. Now, you can get a degree apprenticeship, people can still get a degree, but every single business in East Lancashire, I'm sure, is shouting, hallelujah, the government is going to push apprenticeships and drive our economic base, our industrial base here in the United Kingdom. And these are proper, highly paid, secure jobs where people don't go into debt to get them. And I think that's a good thing for young people.
Well, Jake, I'm really glad you've brought up the apprenticeships side of this policy. It's really important. Let's listen to what Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, had to say about it earlier today.
I think the Conservatives have really not thought this through properly. We need more apprenticeships, but actually the Conservative record is really poor. They've let young people down time and again, and since 2015, they've cut the number of apprenticeships for young people by 170,000. So this is a mission of failure.
Jake Berry, there's the leader of the Lib Dems saying your party has actually cut apprenticeships in recent years. How do you respond?
Well, certainly here in Lancashire, that isn't a figure I recognise. I haven't seen the figures he's referred to. I'm glad to see he's dried off. But, you know, certainly for our economy, look, if I could say one thing should be our three priorities for the Lancashire economy, it would be vocation, vocation, vocation. We have businesses crying out for young men and young women to come and take high quality, highly paid, secure apprenticeships here in our businesses. That's why the Prime Minister is right to focus on this. Tony Blair famously said, I want 50% of young people to go to university. That's great. I support that. What about the other 50%? What about the forgotten 50%? We need to be prioritising apprentices so those young people who don't go to university can get those highly paid, secure jobs that we are creating here in Lancashire.
Now, Jake Berry, just finally, the Labour Party today has sent out their attack dog, Darren Jones, to claim that the Conservative Party has an enormous black hole in its spending plans. This is what he said.
Well, look, the Conservative Party has set out a number of policies in this first week of the general election campaign, which is over £70 billion of unfunded spending commitments. And it's for the Conservative Party to answer the question, how are you funding these commitments? As we've said it today, there is a real risk of unfunded policies affecting directly family finances, as we've experienced after Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng.
Well, that was Darren Jones saying that there's £70 billion of unfunded spending you've signed up to.
Well, look, if that's your attack dog, I think you might want to go back to Battersea Dogs Home and see if they've got something a bit fiercer. But their figures are complete and utter nonsense. They're trying to scare people. The government has quite rightly set out a desire to get rid of national insurance over the very long term. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And they're saying, well, that's, you're going to have to pay for all of that in year one. No, you don't. You should be having an economy where working people are able to keep more of their own money in the first place. We should be talking long term about tax cuts. And I say this, Tom, to your viewers and listeners at home. Anyone who believes that if you vote Labour and you get a Labour government, that all of the pie-in-the-sky promises they've made, nationalising the railway industry, nationalising apparently some water companies, giving trade unions carte blanche to renegotiate all their terms and conditions, anyone who believes, as Keir Starmer, the self-proclaimed socialist this week said, that that can be paid for by putting VAT on school fees and closing a non-existent now tax loophole on non-doms is dreaming. If we get a Labour government, they're going to put your taxes up. They've set out a massive shopping list. All of that is unfunded, and that is the real risk. My dog's just walked into the background there. He could be their new attack dog. That is the real risk if you vote Labour.